Hello and welcome to Season 6 of Movies and Tea. I'm your host as always, Edward Jones, and joining me of course is our very own Queen Bee, Miss Kim Lowe.
Hello.
Well, welcome everyone. As we said, this is Season 6 and we're taking a slight departure from our usual format of director filmography reevaluation to instead provide a selection of directors for this season, as we're going to be looking at a selection of female directors whose work we feel perhaps does not get the recognition that it deserves. And unfortunately, at the same time, these are directors who haven't quite got the filmography to justify a whole season to. So we thought that rather than, ignore their work, and especially as a lot of these films haven't really get the recognition that they properly deserve, we would do a slightly different change in our seasonal format, and instead we've selected 8 directors whose films we feel are worth certainly checking out and whose work is definitely worth reevaluating and getting some recognition. So we're kicking things off with 1995's Clueless, and yes, you are all that old. A film which is not only a fun satire on the upper privileged lives of Beverly Hill's high school students, but also one of a series of modern day adaptations of classic popular fiction. In this case, Jane Austen's Emma receiving the reworked treatment, but put it in the same ilk as the likes of Cruel Intentions and 10 Things I Hate About You. Now, Kim, obviously, when it comes to Clueless, I don't know about yourself, but this is a film that I've watched so many times that I still kind of feel like I know it inside and out, but yet sitting down to rewatch it for this recording, I would find myself discovering a whole bunch of stuff that I never even realized was there before. So
yeah, well, I'm pretty much the same. This type of movies is really right up my alley. I love movies that are like this, coming of age comedy, that sort of a little bit of I don't know, teen romance, something like that. It's not really teen romance in this, but there's but it's still it's really right up my alley, especially because, Clueless was one of those movies which was one of those fun movies that you got to watch as a homework assignment because of its adaptation of Jane Austen's Emma. So it was one of those really fun things that actually hit my radar a lot earlier than after after getting into really blogging and being serious about talking about movies. So this one came very early, much earlier in my viewing history, and because of that, I've seen this movie so many times, and every single time it's so much fun to just rewatch it, to turn it on. And even though, right now, as you watch it more, you start seeing all these things that are in real life, if this happened, the realistic part of me, the 30s me is okay, well, these things would never have, would never happen in real life, just realistically. But still, you can really sit down and enjoy this sort of, this comedic kind of side of just this girl who's clueless about life, and she doesn't really realize that she is.
definitely so. The film itself follows Cher, who's played by Alicia Silverstone, who's a privileged high school student in Beverly Hills, who's essentially sets out to find a deeper purpose. To first, initially, as a matchmaker for 2 of her teachers, as a attempt to boost her grades, and second, as she takes the new girl Taj, here played by the wonderful Brittany Murphy, under her wing while dealing with the ups and downs of teenage life. And as you said, Kim, this is very low stakes coming of age sort of drama, as she deals with, boys and fashion and high school drama and friendships and breakups and all that sort of fun things with none of, the hassle of real world responsibilities. So but the film itself is directed by Amy Heckerling, who may not have the same sort of name value as the likes of Fincher or Spielberg, but since the directorial debut with The Fast Times at Ridgemont High, has been behind cult comedies such as National Lampoon's European Vacation and the Look Who's Talking trilogy, which he wisely opted out to direct in the third film and returned solely as the film's producer. And perhaps unintentionally, she gave us this trilogy of high school coming of age sort of dramas. First in the 80s with Richmond High, and then in the 90s we obviously had Clueless, and then in the noughties we had the really forgettable Loser, which starred post American Pie Jason Briggs and Mina Suvari, and also let's not forget it's the film which gave the world Wheatus's Teenage Dirtbag, which just makes me shudder now thinking about it. But the film is really kind of interesting. Is where Cher is sort of introduced as the sort of queen bee sort of character that normally we're so used to seeing as being playing sort of like the bitch, the antagonist, to sort of the underdog character we're more used to following. And here we somehow managed to still root for this character who's pretty much she's so sort of wrapped up in like going to the mall and fashion and privilege, but really she's essentially just this tip of this vacuous iceberg that make up the high school that she goes to, where the students are more concerned about their social standing than their grades, and at the same time she's sort of like Heckerling as a director is kind of like thumbing her nose at this idea of privilege, where these students are sort of like walking around with like the various plastic surgery bandages, and the teachers are basically there just to sort of like kill time, because these students are never really going to have any real world concerns once they get out into the real world, because they're all like basically trust fund babies. So
yeah, I mean it's just you know, we always have this image of high schools, especially in, where is this is when Cali, probably somewhere like that, LA. I can't remember. Is it in LA? I think it's in LA.
Wherever Beverly Hills is located is there, so.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's really, it's that part where we always associate, where there's like a lot of, you know, rich people, and where a lot of these settings are, you know, like for what the OC and the, you know, I mean, Gossip Girl wasn't, but it was in New York.
Yeah.
It's kind of like more, you're set in these areas where it's like really nice weather, and they can all wear like nice skimpy clothing and that sort of stuff.
Compared to where we live, where it's just cold and rains all the time, so.
It's what, like, you live in a place where it rains like what?
About 95% of the time.
And then I live somewhere where it's winter 6 months of the year. So I mean, it's a really different place, and I think that's the fascination for, I don't know if people watching this who live in like LA or California feel the same way, but I think that for me especially, I mean, this is some kind of high school life that I've never experienced, you know, like we never had people that were super rich, or had this kind of like, we had like, you know, cliques and stuff, right?
Yeah.
But not really like some people who stood out more than others, or maybe I was just not noticing it. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it's a whole different world, and that's the fascination of watching this. Is it's everything is so over exaggerated and in such an enjoyable way that you kind of like, you can't help but to, you're not sure whether you want to laugh at the situation or be entertained by it. And yet it's just, I mean Cher is this character, which obviously she's based on, you know, the modern, well, the 90s version of Emma, Emma of Jane Austen, right?
Yeah.
So she has this purpose that's not just about, you know, she has this higher purpose. She believes in, you know, being that, she believes that what she's doing is good, and she believes that giving people makeovers or being playing matchmaker and all those things is really important to her. And she's one of those characters where she's not thinking about falling in love. She's not thinking about love. She's not thinking about boys, for most of the movie at least. And it's refreshing to see this sort of coming of age, because a lot of times we see movies like that which have this sort of image where these girls are always doing something to get the boys' attention. I mean, you can take easy examples similar to this one, like, you know, Mean Girls and that sort of stuff. And it's all about people who you know, these coming of age stories, especially teenage ones, always have them kind of romance rolled into it to kind of give these characters some kind of, I don't know, purpose. It's to get a guy or to get back at a guy or whatever, you know? And in this one, it's not the same thing. Cher isn't that sort of character. She kind of lives in her own little world. And it's really a coming of age story above everything, because it's really about her kind of breaking out of it and realizing how clueless she is about the things around her, and finally realizing what genuinely doing something good, which isn't about benefiting herself, is all about.
Yeah, definitely so. And it's this quest to sort of, by doing good deeds, that she finds enrichment in her life. Because normally when we look at sort of like the coming of age drama, I mean, it's all about the person who's a mess, you know, finding themselves, where Cher's pretty much got everything together. So her sort of strife is very sort of minor sort of issues, really. It's just more about filling in those sort of missing sort of pieces. As you said already, she doesn't care about high school boys. She basically sees them as dogs. You know, they're just constantly jump up at you and need attention. So she's looking for that higher class of man, which, you know, she believes that she finds later on with Christian. But we'll obviously come to that storyline a bit later. But I just found it really surprisingly, the first time you watch it, just how genuine she is, because she takes Taj under her wing, and Taj is obviously the out-of-town sort of like grungy chick, and she's there, and her best friend sort of give her this makeover, and you kind of wait for this other shoe to drop, but it never does. I mean, Cher and Dion take her under the wing and make her part of their group, so the dynamic duo becomes a heroic trio. And it just, even though you wouldn't think that Taj and Cher would get along, the fact that, you know, Taj is so quirky and so sort of down to earth, she's into like the more sort of like indie sort of thing. She's into like drawing cartoons and cares not so much about fashion and things, and sees Cher as this sort of like role model to aspire to. Yet they have this amazing sort of friendship that sort of grows very naturally just through Cher taking her under her wing and sort of giving her that makeover. And I thought it was just constantly surprising. You wait for like the other shoe to drop, but it never really does. Cher is just, as I said, she just is a good person. She just happens to be in the mode of the privileged girl, which we're so used to not seeing being the good character, because, you know, privilege normally brings with it sort of like a bitchy sort of attitude, this expectation of everything being done for you. But with Cher, she's just more about filling in the blanks and finding out what it is that's missing in her life, so to speak.
I mean, her friendship with Ty obviously is, it kind of highlights a bit that, like, it really highlights that Cher is a person with a good heart. She also is fairly naive, I think. And that's what makes her character fun, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I really like characters that are naive, especially because it really emphasizes, especially for, you know, the privileged, kind of protected type of delicate flower sort of thing, right? You have this feeling that she is very spoiled, and there are moments that she's really bratty because of her, you know, insistence on certain things and whatnot. But in the end, you see that she's not really that type of person. Like, she, you know, between all the arguing with her dad, she's arguing for the right reasons to keep him in good health. And then you have things like, you know, she's talking with Ty, and she's really trying to give her, you know, help Ty find direction in this new school that she's in, that obviously she seems to believe Ty isn't fitting in and not being with the right people. But as the movie goes along, we soon realize that as Cher's perspective changes, she starts seeing things a little bit differently for the people and not for just the appearance of things, the appearance of, you know, whose kid this family is from and whatnot, and just, you know, social status is important, but is it really that important, kind of thing. And we see with Ty that it changes in nature. They start having this phase where she's kind of like the person that Ty looks up to, and then eventually with certain events, they start seeing kind of eye to eye on things. Like you see Ty changing a little bit to a different person, which isn't really the person that, that's as likable, I guess, when she was kind of naive and, singing to Mentos commercials and all those things. and then when it evolves to the end where they have this kind of like, I guess a little bit of a, what do you call it? Like just, they kind of get mad at each other a little. And
yeah, because
they have a little, they have an argument. It's and Ty doesn't take it too well, the criticism and whatnot, and the judgment, I guess. And you just start seeing this different person. Like this person comes out that she has this kind of ugly side to her. This side that Cher usually was before. The person that doesn't really think about what she says and then she says it. And sometimes they don't really mean it. They just it's kind of like a defense mechanism type of thing.
Definitely. So the wonderful put down of "you're just a virgin who can't drive," which Brittany Murphy admitted afterwards she at the time was in fact a virgin who couldn't drive, which made it quite funny. But no, Brittany Murphy as Ty is just, I miss Brittany Murphy so much, and more so after seeing this movie. When you see her sing "Long Time," she said to the Mentos commercials, it's so unbelievably cute. And I don't know, I think if you know how you like, you look at films and you think, oh, well, who I would be in this sort of situation. I think Ty's like who I would be if I was in this world. I'd be that sort of clueless mess who probably would be singing along. I mean, I would like to think I was like Josh, Paul Rudd's character, the rational voice in this, but I know I'm not that cool. But yeah, I just it's funny because then when we look at obviously like Emma, like a lot of the Austen works, I mean, it's a privileged fantasy you're looking at. I mean, it's not like you're looking at like what was happening with the downstairs people in these books, is it? You're always looking at like the people of privilege who have got very little worries apart from getting married and attending fancy balls and wearing frocks and things. And it's perfectly transposed when we look at Clueless, which essentially takes that world. So again, we've got privileged kids who have very little concerns about, so they sort of fill their time with very sort of minor things such as going to parties and getting their licenses, and you can tell just how detached from the real world these kids are, especially when we have like the debate monologue where Cher's there talking about immigration, in particular the bringing the welcoming like Haitian refugees into the US, and she like compares it to overbooking at a dinner party, and it's you can just see her like her teacher who's played by the wonderful Wallace Shawn just looking and going, what the hell is you on about? And I mean, this is the thing when you look at like at people like Wallace Shawn and you can see every scene Wallace Shawn's in, he's like clearly trying not to laugh at what's going on because he's like so amused by what's seeing on. And it's kind of funny that we see Wallace Shawn in this, and Wallace Shawn would turn up again in Gossip Girl, because Gossip Girl is essentially the same as Clueless. It's just transposed to New York. It's and perhaps what these kids would be if they were a little older. I think maybe so.
A little older and with a lot of sex and drugs, and bad decisions.
I think Gossip Girl might be my like further viewing recommendation because it's awesome. But let's have a look at the rest of this cast. I mean, we obviously mentioned already about Alicia Silverstone and Cher. We've got Stacey Dash as Dion. Stacey Dash was another of those actors, much like Donald Faison, who never age. She was 26 when she was playing this role, and she was playing a character half her age, but it's completely passable. I would never question the age that she is in this film. We also have Paul Rudd, who is just awesome as always. He plays Cher's stepbrother, Josh, because as her father tells us, you divorce wives, not children. And it's kind of interesting as well with her father, the fact he still maintains his step-parent role, even though he's no longer attached to his wives. He still supports and has these connections with these stepchildren he's been amassing through these various women that he's married. So
is there various?
I assume
there
so.
Was only Josh, no?
just the way he said is sort of like he divorced wives, not children, indicating there's been more than one since his.
Well, I mean, there was only one that showed up, so I would assume there's only one, but, you know. But, what do I know, right?
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, Josh is there to sort of provide the real-world counterpart to Cher, because he's obviously into watching CNN and, you know, and helping out Cher's father with his ongoing litigation. And even though, like, Cher has obviously got this attachment from the world, she takes a lot of inspiration from her father, who's like this $500 an hour litigator, and spends a lot of time shouting like abuse at everybody. But he's got, at the same time, you can feel there's this warmth underneath all the shouting. It's sort of like he's shouting at you, but in the most loving way possible. And the way that she's so, as I said, she sits out there and she's like argues. She comes up with this way to sort of change her report card by, in her version of doing litigation, which is to basically set up Wallace Shawn's character with Twink Chaplin's environmental sort of studies teacher in one of those more unlikely pairings, but somehow it still works. So,
well, I mean, Clueless is a little bit like, it's a little bit odd, right? There's some awkward moments. Things don't have to make sense exactly, and somehow these two characters seem to, I don't know, they're cute, you know, they're cute together. It's fun to see, you know, the whole thing going on, and I feel that it highlights the point that Cher is a little bit like, she has this kind of, I don't know, she's just focused in her little world, right? And she doesn't realize the things that are going on around her. Like, oh, this person has a crush on her and not someone else. Or, you know, that you know, she sees things through her own perspective. And sometimes they're right, but most of the time she misses a lot of things, even though she thinks she's so, you know, above it all type of thing.
Yeah. And, I mean, initially she's just there playing matchmaker. I mean, she sets up Miss Geiss and Mr. Hall, which obviously would draw in comparisons to Emma would be the characters of Mr. Weston and Miss Taylor. And she tries to go 2 for 2, so she tries to team up Ty, who would obviously be Harriet in the book, and she tries to match up with Eton, who would, in a real leap of adaptation, is Mr. Eaton in the book. And obviously Eaton is, he's kind of a jackass, but he's sort of like the best of this situation. I mean, he's played by Jeremy Sisto. If we haven't said already, this cast is just stacked with so many people who've gone to bigger and greater things off the back of this movie. I think there's no one that I could see in this cast who didn't like go on to have like a really great career after this. Even like the likes of Brecklin Mayer, who turns up as Travis in here, went on to do great things as well. So, but Jeremy Sisto plays Eaton, who's sort of like the initial person that she tries to team Ty up with, and I don't know if it was ever believable that he was interested in her, but even with his white boy dancing that we see at the party, which is pretty damn embarrassing, the fact that I think Heckerling realised that that Sister can't really dance, and hence why we have that rolling with the homies sort of rocking back and forth nonsense on the breakfast bar. Even in 90s standards, this is pretty piss poor dancing, it has to be said.
I don't know. I mean, 90s, I don't think I went to parties like that. So I wasn't a teenager in the 90s. Maybe the tail end of it. But so I don't know. But I don't know. I mean, Elton's character is interesting. I mean, I think above anything, it's really just, you know, he's there as proof that, you know, some people are like, you can't prove someone more clueless than some guy that you think is your best friend, but like, I don't know if I just live in this world that this doesn't happen to me.
Okay.
But maybe I set up a lot of barriers, but I had a lot of like, I have a lot of guy best friends.
Yeah.
Especially in like high school and elementary school. I mean, I've mentioned in previous podcasts, I was more of a tomboy. I hung out with guys a lot more. And it was just like, I've never had guy friends which was like, oh yeah, they're gonna put your arms around you and then kiss you on the cheek or something, right? And then you don't think they like you. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's my Asian mentality that I'm a little bit more closed-minded with these things.
Yeah.
Like, I would never have let that happen in the first place. But I don't know, like, that seems like it's like a big, like, he doesn't do that to anybody else, So it's a little bit weird that she doesn't notice it. She just kind of like, oh, Elton's interested in you, like type of thing, and then starts matchmaking blindly over something that that seems like, how much do you know this person who's supposedly your best friend, right?
Yeah, I mean, he obviously, there's that whole sort of when they go to the party in the valley, and she's really sort of trying to push them together. And I think it sort of really becomes pretty obvious who he's actually interested in when it comes to like the carpooling sequence, and he's basically trying to push her off, push Ty off on the other friend, just so he can get Cher alone to himself. But she's, as I said, as we've mentioned many times, she is pretty clueless. So, as the title suggests, so she doesn't obviously realize this, and she's there talking Ty up in like the good friend she is, but he's like just basically ignoring any of it because he's all about Cher. So, and then he dumps her in the middle of some valley, which is real nice of him. So,
and so goes on a very crappy night for her.
It is. It's but I have to say, for the amount of times I've seen this movie, I completely forgot that it's got a Christmas scene, which means we can add it to the alternate Christmas list. And this is one of those magical Christmas parties where the light up ornaments aren't apparently plugged in, so you can walk off with them. As apparently it's one of those parties where you steal anything that's not nailed down in the house, as we see with the guests like wandering off with various Christmas lawn ornaments and things.
Because that's what you do at parties. You start taking people's stuff.
Apparently you do. You just go and steal stuff. When it obviously, I mean, while Cher obviously spends a good time trying to, matchmake people together, when Christian comes into her life and he's sort of like this James Dean style fellow, he's, I don't know if he found him charming or douchey. I'm still not sure where I stand on Christian. He seems like her dad calls him out pretty quick as a Rat Pack rejects, which I thought was pretty funny.
Oh, I mean, Cher's dad is like fun as heck. Like, he is great. He is one of those like amazing characters. Like those, I love 90s. I really love 90s, or even early 2000s. We had some really, like, if you did a list of great father roles in coming of age movies or teen movies or something.
Yeah.
I mean, he would be right up there. Like, he is amazing.
I mean, he's played by Dan Hedaya, who actually went on to say this was like one of his favorite films and favorite filming experiences that it had. So he rates the film extremely highly, much like Time Magazine did, who rated it as one of their top 15 high school movies of all time. So it's got that sort of credential there. But yeah, he is. There's something about his character that's just. It just works every scene he's in, even though it is a very difficult character to pull off, to be sort of gruff and lovable at the same time. And when we get to the end, and he actually shows like that softer side and does he's the one who really highlights all the things that Cher does without realizing the fact that she's looks after her father and generally cares about people, and the fact that she's so much like her mother, who she never knew but at the same time idolizes and has these conversations with, because she died when Cher was just a baby for a liposuction accident. Obviously when Christian comes into her life, and he's the first one to sort of go bullshit on his nonsense, as I said, he's almost like too cool for school. This kid is. He's got like his 1950s aesthetic going on before that was like a thing. So
you know something is wrong with Christian.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying there aren't guys like Christian that are straight. But you right away, you know, so like through the scenes of Christian, you start realizing that something's not exactly right with him. I mean, he notices a lot of little things that she's doing. You know, from all those little things, you see his little impressions of her trying to get his attention by, you know, playing up being wanted, being desired, and all that sort of thing. And then, you know, on the other hand, he's this guy with a lot of fashion sense, and obviously we're playing on this thing that, you know, straight guys aren't like that. They're not about, you know, the clothes they wear or, you know, dressing some sort of special, you know, classy style for these teenagers and stuff. And it plays on a lot of these, I guess you can call it a bit of stereotype, I guess. Through the little things, you start realizing that Cher's the only person who doesn't realize. Obviously, Cher and Dion, because they're both in their little world and universe.
Yeah.
But it becomes this surprise that, you know, obviously, when she thinks something's wrong with her for the first time, the boyfriend of Dion, Murray, comes out and he's like, "What are you talking about?" You know, like the guy he's not into you because of other reasons, you know.
he's a Barbra Streisand carrying. I mean, this is again with when it comes to Christian. I mean, there's a lot of things I only notice now, and I think it's because I'm watching it with a more sort of critical eye. But there's so many references to what Christian's all about throughout the film, such as the fact he's reading William Burgess's Junkie. Which initially I thought was like a hip thing, because we all go through that stage where we buy ourselves a copy of Naked Lunch and pretend to read it. I don't know if you've ever tried reading Naked Lunch. It's a lot of bizarre, junky nonsense. But yeah, obviously with us the homosexual undertones there. We've got the scene where he's at the museum and he's looking at the painting of two men affectionately in an embrace, which... and then when he comes over and he wants to like watch some Like It Hot and Spartacus because they both got Tony Curtis in, and in particular they highlight the scene with the Roman master Laurence Olivier trying to seduce Tony Curtis as like he's like, "Oh wait, you got to watch this scene." And this goes over head. But then again, when you compare Christian to the other boys in her school, he's like a different class. Because he's, you know, he's well dressed. He's very sort of independent. With these other guys they're a different sort of clueless. They're sort of wrapped up in being players and just they're either within the school they're either burnout or they're like Mary, and they're just sort of like very sort of like they feel they got game and that they're these desirable icons. Even though they're basically, as I said, like everyone in this film, they're completely clueless, so...
Yeah, but I mean, that's the same thing. Like, if we go back and we look at Elton. Elton's that sort of clueless character. He's kind of like the counterpart of Cher. Because, you know, he lives in this world where he believes in, you know, the marrying to your social class and living in his own little privileged world.
Oh, yeah.
And being rich and being with the people that only reflect well on him and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, because he says he's like, "Oh, do you know who my father is?" It's sort of like, "Oh yeah, I can't marry Ty. She's a commoner compared to me." Well, obviously Cher's obviously with her social standings a lot more on his level. So, but yeah, I think he really shows his true colours when he mentions who his father is, because that's important. But no, I mean, there's lots of really fun little clips, like when you look at Kristen and he's at the bar, and he's more interested in chatting at the bartender than the girl who comes up to him, and he just basically swats her away. But can we talk...
Yeah, but you know, that's one of those scenes where, to Cher, I think it really highlights how, when you want to see something, like if you're in this space, this headspace where you want to see something, everything is interpreted to your situation. To her, it was like, "Oh, he's so madly in love with me that, you know, he just, you know, he's so loyal. So he doesn't care about other girls," type of thing.
Yeah.
You know? And that's what she wants, because Cher is someone who's everyone's world revolves around her. And because of that, you know, she likes Christian because Christian, you know, is not only classy and kind of like the boy that that can match up to her fashion sense and really have that sort of like common interest type of thing. But at the same time, Christian is also this guy which feels like, you know, she feels like it's kind of he treats her a little bit like, like a lot of attention on her and stuff too, and he's not like the other boys, which is like, oh, looking at some other teenage girl, hot girls walking by and stuff, and he's a different thing, but obviously she's not seeing the other side of the picture because of her own involvement and her own interest.
Yeah, I mean, her infatuation with Christian basically covers for a lot. Really, I mean, the fact he takes us to that awful club where they got the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones playing, it's like, oh god, that's another 90s casualty right there. The fact that we have the most half-assed crowd surfing sequence at the end with these 6 people attempt to crowd surf the guy and then they go up and think, no, we're okay, and just put him down. I wasn't sure who looked more uncomfortable, the people there trying to dance to that awful music or the band for being associated with it, because it's just, oh god, we had no taste of the 90s when it came to ska music. That's something I'm so glad that's just gone. Bloody ska punks. But yeah, I mean, when he comes over though, and we got the whole scene where she's like trying to seduce him, and she's like got her nice dress on, and she's got her internal monologue provides so many of the best moments of this film. It's sort of like, it's important when a man comes over to bake something and she just throws down this like lump of frozen cookie dough and slams it in the oven. That's her idea of baking.
Well, that, it's still considered baking, as long as you don't burn the damn thing.
Yeah, but when he comes in and it's like this cremated log in the oven, and it's sort of like, oh honey, you tried to bake. Throughout the scene, it just feels like you're not watching actors try and play this in an adult sort of situation. It's how kids this age would act, this sort of clumsy seduction. The fact that she's there trying to seduce him, and it's sort of like, oh, my toes are cold, and so he goes and grabs a pillow and puts it over her feet, and she tries to show a little more leg and falls off the bed. It's just this wonderful clumsiness to it, which is just perfectly. The character show just played so pitch perfect by Alicia Silverstone that it's unsurprising the fact that she got this. She was the only actor who didn't have to audition for the role. She was just given it straight away, and I can't think of anyone else who sort of nailed it apart from if we look at the TV series, because the actress who took over from her in the TV series, Rachel Blanchard, also really nailed it as well. So. I don't know, did you ever watch the TV series of Clueless?
No.
Okay, it was good. that was my Saturday afternoon viewing, that and the A-Team. So
I don't know. I don't remember it being on TV. So
no. Yeah, basically all the cast returned, apart from the ones who had got better offers. So Paul Rudd hadn't returned at that point. So. And I think they replaced the father as well. But no, if you're looking for more further viewing, then especially for this thing, then the Clueless TV show is really good as well. So the relationship between Josh and Cher, that he ultimately turns out to be the man she's been looking for all along, in that wonderful revelation sort of third act sequence, which feels that it dragged a little bit. The film was kind of dragging its heels a that bit, but she realizes that that Josh is the person we have, and we obviously see her coming down the staircase in the dress, and it's that wonderful Geely moment where he's sort of seeing her no longer as this bratty stepsister, but as an actual woman, which I thought was kind of touching. But I mean, did you buy their relationship at all?
Well, I mean, I think you can buy it, but I just feel like the deal with Clueless is that it was never fully about this whole romantic thing. Obviously, if you compare it to Austen is a little bit more. When we watch Emma for the novel of Emma, it brings that relationship element a little bit more. Here, I think it's a little bit more in the background, because honestly, you have Josh that realizes his attraction to Cher, but he never really he obviously has a little bit of moments where he starts being a little bit more protective over her, and wants to go to the party suddenly, and obviously the Cher's dad sees it all and has that smirky smile, and he says just go to the party. But I think that for Cher it's this revelation that comes a little late, I think, and by the time we end with the fact that they're in this really sweet scene where they realize that they like each other or have feelings for each other, or whatever you call it, it's a nice touching part. But I just don't know if it was really, if I would have wanted to see more, like if it would have started a little bit earlier. But then it's very much, I don't know, it's very much like feels a little bit feels a little bit like movies that end like 16 Candles or something.
Okay.
Where you end with that sort of scene where they get together, but what happens after is you don't know, right? Because it's really the start of their story is the end of the phase of her coming of age type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I know what you mean. It's sort of like I suppose it's better than obviously those John Hughes moments. I mean, nobody's riding off on a ride on Morrow or standing on someone's lawn with a boombox in this.
I like John Hughes, some
really?
John Hughes. So
okay.
Yeah.
I like Say Anything, but I can't say that I really care for Breakfast Club. But no, that's a film for another day. But yeah, I mean, it ties everything up really nicely. I mean, we obviously end at that wedding sequence, and everybody's coupled up. Everyone's with who they should be, and I think at that point, everything's all been tied up, and it's sort of her and Josh getting together is sort of like the last thing that needed to sort of complete it. I mean, she's done all the good deeds, so now she gets a treat, which is that she gets to make out with Paul Rudd, who apparently has never aged.
That's true. Paul Rudd also has never aged. He still looks very boyish.
He's got I don't know. Maybe they're pumping out clones of him. Because there's certain actors who just never age. Have you noticed that? There's
You'd have to say what he played, and then I'd
Adam Scott. Because he's like Adam Scott. And one of those actors who just never seems to age. Like, you look at Adam Scott, who was obviously like in like Hellraiser Bloodline, which is like 96, and then you look at him in Parks and Rec, and it's like, you've not aged at all. You may like grow a beard, like in oh, bugger me, I'm just not good with names today. But yeah, I mean, he occasionally like grows a beard or something to look a bit more evil or older, but he never ages. And Paul Rudd's exactly the same. And this was only Paul Rudd's second film. I mean, he did Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers before this, but I think with the production it meant that with the release dates, Clueless actually came out before that one. So two interesting movies back to back that he did there. So, but yeah, I don't know. I'm always happy to see Paul Rudd. I like anything I see Paul Rudd in is always good. I don't think I've seen him in anything that I didn't like him in.
The deal with Paul Rudd is that I forget that he's in things.
Okay.
And then he shows up, and then I'm like, hey, it's Paul Rudd. This is pretty good, sort of thing. And then that's why I don't deliberately go seeking movies with Paul Rudd in it. But I think that over the years, you start realizing that he is a really good actor. And I feel like sometimes I don't think about him as much. Because he's in these roles where you don't realize as much. I think I only realized Paul Rudd was in Clueless in like the second viewing or something like that, when I had watched something else that he was in, and then I started connecting the roles together that he's done.
He was one of those actors who, I mean, he managed to work his way into the Friends cast, I mean, which was tight as anything, yet we somehow managed to buy him as like this seventh member of the Friends clique. So He's got a real charm to him, to say the least, and yet an everyman quality, which I think is what his appeal is. He's not just another Hollywood pretty boy.
Yeah,
but at the same time, he's not like the same frattiness as like the human fuzzy bear Seth Rogen. So why do I want to put Paul Rudd and Seth Rogen together? I don't know why. I don't know. Maybe it's just everyman. I mean, further viewing, if you like Clueless, I mean, what's a good thing to sort of pair it with? I mean, we've obviously mentioned a few things over the course of this episode.
We mentioned a lot already. But I mean, I think the closest would be, obviously I mentioned it the earliest, was Mean Girls is one that's very, very comparable.
Yep.
If you want to talk about, privilege and that sort of high school type of thing, I think Bring It On kind of is a good match
definitely.
too. And then, obviously with that, you also have, movies like Legally Blonde. That's also about, privileged girls, very clueless. But if you think about a movie that's structured a little bit more like this one, where it's more about the coming of age and then about, the coming of age, then about the actual, romance is kind of in the background. I would say Edge of 17 is a really good one.
Yes, definitely. That's one of mine.
Yeah, and then obviously I mentioned 16 Candles, which I think, 16 Candles are, I think Pretty in Pink probably would work also, but I've only seen Pretty in Pink one time, so I don't know. I feel like it would match too. Like these two movies would also go with it.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, for myself, other than obviously Edge of 17, which you recommended already, I mean, I would throw in Booksmart as well. I think that would pair it nicely with this. I think for like the male equivalent, I think American Pie is like the closest you get. I think that's very much about men trying to find themselves and dealing with their own sort of pressures and things. And it was certainly, I had to say, it's still a fantastic sort of high school movie. I think if you go back and look at all the 80s, they're very problematic in the humour now that they contain in them. And I think, again, this is another show I have with John Hughes and his Orientalism when his use of Ray Dawn Chong. The fact that every time he appears on the screen, you hear a bloody gong go off. And this is supposed to be like the height of humour. But never mind. But if you're looking for other TV shows, I mean, definitely check out the Clueless TV show. That was really good. And I can't look at this without wanting to put Gossip Girl over it. Go check out Gossip Girl as well. It's more...
Well, and on top of that, Gossip Girl had, I think, 2 episodes or something that was directed by Amy Heckerling.
I believe it did.
Yeah.
So that's got it going for it, and in many ways, I think we've got to go. I mean, it's more towards the Cruel Intentions side of things, but it's privileged kids living in a privileged world. So, and it's surprisingly watchable at the same time, which is just a show I walked into it thinking I was never going to get into this, and then binged 5 seasons of it. So, even though the ending sucks, it's really good. You end up rooting for the characters you wouldn't think you would, and caring little about the characters you're supposed to be rooting for. But the journey's fun. Cool. Well, that brings us to the end of another episode of Movies and Tea. Thank you as always for listening. If you haven't done already, please do hit the like and subscribe button where you happen to listen to us. And you can also check out our full archive of episodes at moviesandteapodcast.wordpress.com. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. And, leave us a review. Let us know what you think of the show, as it all helps raise the profile of the show. But, Kim, where does our female director filmographies take us to next?
The next place we're going is we're going to be looking at the next director, which is Karen Kusama, and her 2000, I think it was her debut movie, Girl Fight. Starring the fantastic Michelle Rodriguez.
Yes, we're going from one end of the spectrum, really, as we're going from the privileged kids to hanging out with the underprivileged kids in a rather unique female boxing movie, as you said already, starring the fantastic Michelle... It's not Michelle Williams, is it?
Michelle Rodriguez.
Yes. I was thinking Michelle Williams. The fantastic Michelle Rodriguez in a very underrated film, and one that I'm really excited to talk about there as well. But that's all coming on our next episode. But thank you as always for listening. Thank you to my co-host Kim, and we'll be back next time to talk about Girl Fight. Until then, good night.